Welcome, everybody. My name's Dr. Dolores Fazzino. I'm a nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer, and I help people heal in ways they never thought possible by bridging the physical with the spiritual and the visible with the invisible. So I've been in the healthcare industry for well over 45 years. And my area of expertise, believe it or not, is surgery. I'm an assistant surgeon and I assist on all different types of surgeries. In fact, I've probably assisted on over 20,000 surgeries in my career. I've been doing this aspect of my work in addition to looking at ways people can heal themselves. So I get to see people at their most dire physical creations or manifestations of their thoughts, beliefs, their connectedness to whether or not they're connected to themselves, whether or not they experience their emotions. And I could see the end result of that demonstration in the physical form. And unfortunately, when they come to see us, it's like they need to have surgery to remove something, maybe that's from a chronic condition or a cancer or whatever. What I found over my decades of being in healthcare is that a lot of times people are very disconnected from their bodies, and from an energetic standpoint, as a medical intuitive, I get to see things that a lot of people are not privy to seeing because of my gifts. A lot of times, what I find is that um, the head is doing one thing and the body is doing something completely different, and the two aren't playing nicely in the playground at all. There's disconnections. And I think this was kind of addressed by Tanya when she was sharing about one size doesn't fit everybody. This is very true in just health and well-being. The end product, like for an example, if somebody was diagnosed with um, when somebody was actually diagnosed with an issue, okay, just say for an example, a cancer, okay, sometimes the end product is not the same for I mean, the end product is the same. They have a cancer, but the route to get there is so uniquely different to the individual. I think in Western medicine, and I could say this because I've been in that realm for a long time, and remember, I bridged the two, different modalities together, is that I think we in Western medicine have a tendency to do a huge disservice to people because we are good at giving a prescription, a procedure, and we rarely look at the underlying issues. It's like the tip of the iceberg. The physical thing is what you could see, but the underlying things that have contributed to creating that physical thing are underneath the surface, and we have no idea what that is. For me, I was in a real conundrum for a very, very, very long time as to, why is it that, this patient was here like 2 years ago, had cancer. We did the surgery, they did chemo and radiation, and they're back with another cancer. And I'm thinking, like, what the heck is going on here? It's like we're almost in that reactive state. And there's this game at the fair in the United States called whack-a-mole, where the mole pops up and you're kind of with the mallet trying to chase after the mole over whatever. And it's just like that's what we do. We react. We don't look at what's underneath the surface that's driving that. And this is where it's so rich with the possibilities of healing and healing in ways you never thought possible. So when we look underneath the iceberg, what's there? There's emotions, whether or not you've experienced them or not. There's your thought processes, what your beliefs are. This is a real showstopper here is what you say to yourself when you're by yourself in your brain. We are not kind to ourselves at all. Okay. We are constantly beating ourselves up. That's another thing. The other thing is whether or not you're connected to your body. Okay. And that's like a conversation that is probably probably paramount to this whole short talk that I'm going to give. So often we are so disconnected from ourselves. We have a tendency to be in our heads so more than necessary because we are always thinking, we're worrying, we're reacting. When we're in our head, you are thinking about the past, worrying about the future. Rarely are you in the present moment. Think about that for a minute. You're not. It's kind of funny because it's like you're trying to figure everything out, and it's like you pull yourself out of the present moment. And that's where the disconnect occurs. This is where you pull yourself out of your body because guess what? In order to be connected to your body, you have to be in it. And when you're not in it, you're in your head. And a real indicator of how that happens is you'll be on your path doing something and in the present moment, and then you get triggered. And then you just pop right out of your body and in your head. You're trying to react and create something and, make something happen and control what's happening because a lot of it is based on fear. Let's face it, our society and how we've been programmed is to run on fear. And it shows up in every aspect of our life. You could kind of look back on your life and realize that, oh my God, I did this because I was afraid that X, Y, and Z was going to happen, or I was afraid that this happened before, so it's going to happen again. So our beliefs, how we create things, our disconnectedness from ourselves and our body, and most importantly, our connectedness to our higher self. And we're going to talk about higher self later because I'm going to do a little, uh, you know, experiment with that, or a little demonstration with that later as a practicum type thing after this is complete. But what is interesting is this, circling back to somebody who has a cancer or something like that. We'll use that as an example. Sometimes what happens with people who are diagnosed with anything that's chronic or terminal, you could go back up to 18 months, 2 years, that there was some significant stressor that occurred in the person's life. Maybe they lost a loved one and never really got over the grief of that. Maybe they lost their job, their spouse, whatever. There's some type of big stressor that has occurred. Also, there might be a big stressor of, a lot of positive things too, but there was a huge stressor to the body. And so what happens is that your body is trying to compensate for that, and it kind of goes down its own little rabbit hole of what it needs to do. How we handle that stress is paramount. And, sometimes that stress is like the tip of the iceberg of something that's deeper. And I know I'm using icebergs a lot, so we got quite a few of them popping up here. The point I'm making is that a lot of times the stuff we cannot tangibly see is the stuff that is driving us, under the surface, on the unconscious, okay? Yet when we are able to establish a relationship with our body, allow our body to become our own best friend and have a relationship with our body, this is where the gold nuggets come in. This is where you are able to take your power back, be able to move forward and embrace what's coming to you and be in the present moment. Because all we really have is this moment right here, right now. So in Western medicine, we have options. We cut the part out, and there's a whole nother component with surgery and preparing for surgery, which I work with people too, because we want to make sure that we have a complete healing when we undergo any type of surgical procedure. Because surgery is an insult to the body, basically. There's a lot of inflammation that goes on and a lot of different things, a lot of moving parts, so to say. But yet, when we remove an organ or remove part of you, it's like your body also goes through a grieving process. Okay. And so, how do we pay reverence to that body part that served us for so long? A lot of times we don't. We just ignore it and cut it out and pretend it's not there. But the essence and the energy of it is still there. And it's still kind of running the show a little bit. So, when we look at everything as moving parts with energy, okay, and we aren't able to visually see it, maybe we could sense it or feel it if you're an empath or an intuitive or a highly sensitive person. You could feel those things even though you can't see it. But energy is like frequency and wavelengths, okay? Your thoughts are wavelengths. You can't see them or feel them, but you have the essence. For many of us, we could walk into a room and feel what has happened prior to that, whether it was a happy occasion or not so happy occasion. It's like you could feel those, it's tangible. When you're in the physical body and you are disconnected, it's like I said, the head's doing one thing, your body's doing something else. So when somebody has like a cancer or anything that's a chronic illness, there's a lot of different moving parts that are misaligned. So the best thing to do is to assist somebody to realign those parts for them. Okay. It's not about somebody like myself doing the work for them. It's about guiding people so they could realign themselves. It's like teaching them how to do this so they could come into harmony, balance, and connectedness with themselves. I'm going to share an example. I had a client not so long ago, well, probably a little while ago. He was on the list to have a liver transplant because he had, I believe he had hepatitis C. And what had happened was he went through different modalities and they reached out to me to find out, how, I could best support him into moving forward. And, I spoke with him and I tapped into his body and I found that for him, there was such a heaviness in his heart space. And what I mean by that is just like sometimes when we're grieving or we hold grudges, energetically, we just shut our heart down. Okay. And energetically, you could feel that. When I asked him, I said, so what's going on? He said, well, I know I'm on the transplant list and it seems like there's an organ that gets available and then the 11th hour it gets canceled because it's a mismatch. And, sometimes people don't think that this is really an issue or a problem, but you know what? It is. It's an energetic one. And I'll tell you why, because what was going on within him was actually preventing him from making that connection to energetically to receive what was to be his. And I knew that it was a karmic payback from another life and time that this guy was going to receive an organ from whoever. He's not going to know the person, but it was a karmic thing. I just knew that in my heart of hearts. And I just, you know what you know what you know. So I asked him, I said, I'm feeling like there's something going on up in your heart. I said, have you looked at some things that you maybe need to work on forgiveness with? Is there something that happened that you're hanging on to, a grudge or something? And all of a sudden he welled up in tears and so I hit it right on the spot. So he worked on some forgiveness stuff and a week later he got his liver because he cleared that and allowed the energy to come so he's able to move forward. So, this is what I mean about healing in ways you never thought possible. A lot of times, things, there's so much happening that we do not see. It's not A plus B equals C. Well, it could be, but I have news for you. It's a matrix. There's things that's so interconnected that you have no idea why they're interconnected or how they're interconnected. And it's not for us to know. It's for us to know and trust that we have that capability to heal ourselves, beyond what we possibly know. Okay. Another thing I wanted to share too is that many of us, we walk around and this is like one of my big things. It's like, one thing I'm going to say is this: the longest relationship you're ever going to have in your life is the one you have with yourself. It's not going to be your spouse. It's not going to be your mother. It's not going to be your brother. It is with yourself. Newsflash. So, how and what are you doing to nurture and love and respect and honor that? Okay. Too often we beat ourselves up. Guilty here. And we are human, and that's what we do. It's about realizing that you're doing it and then pulling yourself back. I call it like the 90-second pause. It's like, okay, I'm being triggered right now. So, and the thing is like the next question I usually ask is, and why is that so? Sometimes when you pull back and you're able to look at the bigger picture, you could see how everything is kind of lining up. And it's not like somebody's doing something to you. That trigger is probably something that is really deep seated on a core level that probably happened to you earlier in your childhood or in another time and place, in another lifetime. This is where the gold is, people. It's like when you're able to go back like that and just even be aware of it, that's enough to shift it and to change it into something else. People think that healing has to be a real difficult and challenging thing. No, it's not. In this day and age where we're ascending so quickly, guess what? It's like flipping switches, like up, on, off, on, off, on, off. It's that easy. So I invite people just to be more mindful and aware of things. So I want to share one more story and then I'm going to take questions. This one happened very recently to me. Unfortunately, there was a colleague of mine that took his life probably about 3 weeks ago. And I didn't know him very, I knew him as a colleague very superficially, but that whole thing just broke my heart. And I didn't realize the gift that was coming out of this until I sat with this probably for, a couple of days. And I couldn't understand why I was so heartbroken. And I started getting flashes of something that happened to me almost 60 years earlier when I was 4. And it was a time when it was almost like hidden grief that I never grieved. My great grandmother passed away when I was about 4 years old. And my dad, I was born an empath, intuitive, and highly sensitive person. So I felt things at a very deep level. And so what happened was um, I had this flashback that I was in my dad's arms and he was sharing news with me that he was going to, my great grandmother's funeral. And I started crying. And he said, "You got to stop crying." Because, I didn't realize that he didn't know how to handle that. But it's just like, I just stopped in that moment. And it was just like all this stuff was pent up within me. And so, what the gift that came out of that, I was able to experience that hidden grief that I carried around for 60 years that has probably been running my life. But it's actually, I felt it unburden myself, and things have gotten so much lighter. So what I'm saying is, like, you never know what the trigger is on the superficial that's going to get you to the richness of healing stuff within yourself. So I'm going to leave you with that, and I'm just going to open this up for questions right now. But thank you so much for listening, and I hope you gained some insight into possibilities of healing in ways you never thought possible. You know, I find that when you are in your body, It's like it's just connecting to your higher self. And we're going to talk more about that because I'm going to give a little mini class on that later. Connecting with your higher self, it's about being in your physical body. Anything you could do to be grounded in your body is key. That's a foundational piece, especially with what we are experiencing right now in our world. There is so much noise going on around us. It's like a way to distract ourselves from being with ourselves. Just think about that for a second. It's so easy to pick up this and go, or, you listen to the news, or it's almost like the dog in the squirrel comes, squirrel, we get distracted by ourselves. And the most important thing is to pull yourself in, because when you are grounded within yourself, it doesn't matter what's going on around you. You're calm, you're centered, you're creating your own world in a chaotic whatever. It's almost like being in the eye of the storm. For many people who've experienced hurricanes, it's like if you've been in the center or the eye of a hurricane, it is surreally calm and quiet. This is what you want to experience in your life, that no matter what's going on around you, you embrace that, and you are that. And it's just like it's like you become, like your Teflon. Whatever's going on around you just rolls off of you. In Western medicine, because I could say this because I bridge both, is like there's changes that are happening. They're slower. I mean, I've been in healthcare for 45 years, and I've been doing this type of work ever since I was a youngster, basically. And I've noticed that maybe the last 15 years, things are evolving and going to that direction, because let's face it, people are sicker than they've ever been. Bottom line, okay? And I think, the whole experience with COVID over the last 4 years pretty much toppled it over into what we're experiencing today, because it's a lot of, I think people are realizing that things that had worked before are no longer working. People are realizing that they're sicker than they've ever been, and they're not getting the answers that they need from the sources that they were getting them before for their health and wellness. Things are changing. It's about people learning how to be in their bodies, number one, have a relationship with themselves, trusting that inner wisdom that they have, because we all have an inner medical team. And what is right for us may not be right for you, Dijon, or Deepak, or Emma, or anybody else. It's right for you, and learning to trust that and advocate for yourself. A lot of times people give their power away to something outside of themselves to make all their decisions for them, especially in their health and wellness. We need to shift that around, and people need to take their power back, tune into themselves, and you will be led. What's your next step? If something doesn't feel like it's aligned with you, please don't do it. Your body's talking to you, folks. And if it's like it's aligned with you, then do it. Go where you're being led. Your inner wisdom, that knowledge, is your sovereign right as a human being. It's time to tap into that secret sauce.
Yeah, I completely agree. So, from what I'm seeing in the chat, I don't think there are any specific questions. Just people are amazed by your story and everything you shared. So we can move on to the next segment.
Yeah, I'm looking too. Yeah, so I think the most important thing I want to say is this: is that we need to be able to have that intimacy that we crave externally, internally with ourselves, because everything starts with us first, you know, and that's how we make changes, not only in our world, but in the surrounding world at all as well. This is how we contribute to collective consciousness. By us making changes and healing and working on ourselves, we are a drop of water in the big pool of collective consciousness. Even a drop has an effect. When you put a drop of water in a body of water, it ripples out. When it ripples out, it affects everything. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it contributes to collective consciousness.